All right, this is video number 3 in our series, Leading Ladies of the Word. We gave an introduction video and then a video on Eve as a leading lady of the Word. And now we come to Miriam. Miriam, a very important character in the Old Testament narrative, one of the leading ladies of the Word for sure. I want to have us look at a number of passages having to do with Miriam and show her as a leader in different parts and times in her life. So let's begin. She starts out as a leading sister. In Exodus 2:4, we have the first reference to Moses' sister, not named here in this text as Miriam, but we find out later that this almost certainly was Miriam. But in any case, I should probably give you a little background of this chapter or the book of Exodus, if you don't know. The Israelites had ended up in Egypt because of a famine, and they were becoming very numerous, and so they became a threat in the eyes of Egyptian leadership, the Pharaoh in particular, and so he enslaved the Israelites. And one of the ways that he sought to protect himself from the threat of this growing number of Israelites was by decreeing that the firstborn, or the male children, would be killed. Male Jewish babies would be killed. Well, Miriam and Moses' parents had baby Moses, and so his life was in danger. And so they came up with a plan to hide Moses for a while. And that plan worked for a while, but babies get louder and more noticeable. And so they decided to put Moses in a basket and place him in the Nile River and just hope and pray that his life would be preserved in some way. Well, as the baby was sent on the river, it says his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. And that sister is Miriam. In verse 7, it says, then his sister asked, so what happened is, the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, found the basket, opened it up, saw that it was a Hebrew baby, and then Miriam jumps out from behind the plants, I guess, and says that she asked the Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? So the princess has decided that she wants the baby, but Miriam steps out and has this clever suggestion that she knows a Hebrew woman that just lost a baby that would be glad to nurse the baby for the princess. And the girl went and got the baby's mother, which is the beautiful way this story plays out, that Moses' own mother gets to raise the baby and wean the baby for a number of years before they turn the baby back over to the princess. But the goal has been accomplished. The life of Moses has been preserved largely because of the courage and the cleverness of Miriam as a probably 6 to 12-year-old girl at this point in the story. So one book that I read summarizes this part of the story in this way. How clever and brave she was to step forward and volunteer her mother as the nurse. I'm astonished that I've never heard any sermons about Miriam aside from the time she struggled submitting to her little brother's leadership. A little bit of an ouch there for preachers, but a good quote. We also want to look at Miriam as a leading citizen. So as you know, Moses grows up and then ends up going to the wilderness for 40 years. He comes back when he's about 80 years old, and he leads Israel out of Egypt. But he doesn't lead alone. He has his brother Aaron as another leader and his sister Miriam as another leader. And so it says in this reference in Exodus chapter 15, then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. Miriam sang to them, sing to the Lord, for he has highly exalted the horse and rider he has hurled into the sea. So we have Miriam as part of that leadership group that led them out of Israel. And then we have in this text Miriam as a leading sinner. Now you might say, why would you talk about Miriam as a sinner in a seminar on leading ladies of Scripture? Well, I'll talk about that in just a second, but let's look at this story in Numbers chapter 12. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Hasn't the Lord also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Well, certainly the answer to our first question, has the Lord spoken only through Moses, is no. Miriam is a prophetess, so the Lord does speak through her. The second question, hasn't he also spoken through us? The answer is clearly yes. She is a prophetess. So the problem is not that she's wrong about asking these questions, it's that she is opposing her brother's leadership on account, in this case, of his Cushite wife. Her and Aaron opposed Moses. She's listed first, so I think there's a good chance that she was the main motivator behind this opposition to Moses. And so she suffers a consequence for that. At once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out of the tent of meeting, all three of you. And then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and summoned Aaron and Miriam. The anger of the Lord burned against them. Now, one thing we can say about this passage is that Miriam is clearly brought into the presence of God, which is something that very few people got to experience. And here's how the story turns out. There stood Miriam, leprous like snow. So Moses cried out to the Lord, "Oh God, please heal her." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not move on until she was brought back. Now, I want to talk for a second about why I included this part of Miriam as a leading sinner. Only the most important characters are given a depth of development as characters in the Bible. For instance, you have characters like Moses. We're shown his story, warts and all. He was a great leader, but also killed a man and had many doubts. We have somebody like David, who was a great leader, a man after God's own heart, but also had Bathsheba's husband Uriah put to death, basically, and committed adultery. We have people like in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, who was a persecutor of the church before converting and becoming the great apostle. So great characters of Scripture. Their stories are told warts and all. I think the fact that Miriam is treated like that in Scripture, that she has these brave, courageous moments and she has these broken, fallen moments, that's because she is a significant character in God's eyes. And so when Miriam died and was buried in Numbers 21, we have a reference for it. We have an account of that. Her death was significant. And this is another way of showing how important of a character she was. You don't just report on just anyone's death. It has to be someone whose death meant something to the community. So to summarize, Miriam as a leading lady, Miriam was a courageous and clever young lady. Miriam was a prophetess who spoke for God. Miriam was a worship leader, as we have the Song of Miriam recorded in Exodus. And Miriam was a significant character, and that's why her story is told warts and all. Her character is developed in the narrative, and her death is a significant moment in the life of Israel. Later in the Old Testament, we have this statement from Micah chapter 6, verse 4. I sent Moses, this is the Lord saying, I sent Moses to lead you, also Aaron and Miriam. So it's talking about these are leaders. Moses was there to lead Israel. Also to lead Israel was Aaron and Miriam. She was a leader in the Old Testament story. So that concludes our brief wrap-up of Miriam as a leading lady of the Word. We'll be back for part 4 of this series if you want to watch the next video.